Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Harley, the Federation Chair, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of To Whom It May Concern, the Federation's booklet to mark the 700th anniversary of the Declaration of Arbroath, edited and produced by A.C. Clarke. It's lovely to see so many of you here and have such a nice chat. Some domestics just before we begin. The event's being recorded and it'll be uploaded on our YouTube channel with links posted on Facebook and on our website. So to help with the quality of the recording and avoid any interference, please keep your microphones switched off when others are reading. Anne will introduce each reader, and this will be the ideal time for you to remember to switch your mic back on, ready for your own slot. Before I pass you on to our host, Anne Clarke, I'd like to thank Anne on behalf of the Federation and all of us here tonight for the huge amount of time and tireless work she's given so freely to produce such a wonderful booklet. It's brimming over with emotional petitions, some very moving, and others that quite literally made me laugh out loud. So thank you everyone for your contributions. And now for the main event, I'll pass you on to our host, Anne Clarke.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I'll second that. Welcome all of you to tonight's alternative, I shall call it, Arbroath celebration, because some of you will know that Scottish Pen, unfortunately, chose this very night to launch their anthology, even though their anthology was printed last year, a year ago nearly, and ours is only printed this year. So I think we are in the right in this, but this is the alternative. And thank you, of course, all of you as contributors, because clearly we wouldn't have the anthology without you. And it was really a delight. And I'm not just saying that, it really was. I wasn't expecting it to be honest, but it was. To read the submissions, all of them, I really, really enjoyed them. Shan't waste any more time, except to say that Jennifer asked you to mute while others are reading, and that's the really important thing. But you might like to consider also switching your video off while others are reading, because it can be quite distracting, even though people are only in little small boxes, to see them, you know, and it does mean if you do that, you can quickly go out and make a cup of tea or whatever you want to do, and nobody's going to be any the wiser. Now, it's my very great pleasure to introduce our very first reader tonight, whom you've just met and spoken to, our last year's screever, Charlie Gracie. Charlie Gracie grew up in Baillieston in Glasgow. His poetry collections, Good Morning and Tales from the Dartry Mountains, were published by Die Hard Press. His first novel, To Live With What You Are, was published by Postbox Press. His work has appeared in a range of anthologies and journals, with some listed for literary prizes, including the Bath Novel Award, Cambridge Short Story Prize, Fish Poetry Prize, and Bridport Short Story and Poetry Prizes. As I've just said, he was the 2020 official screever for the Federation of Writers, a role he says he enjoyed immensely, and is a former chair of the Scottish Writers' Centre. He now lives on the edge of the Trossachs. Charlie's piece, Dear Mother Earth, which, if you have your anthology with you, is on page 54, was born out of his reflections on the self-assurance of humanity, the certainty, or perhaps he means presumed certainty, afforded by religious belief, and some despondency about the ruination of the climate, a thing he must acknowledge he plays a small but crucial part in. Over to you, Charlie, and don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, everybody. And I'm delighted to see that some people haven't put their faces off. rather than some blank. Okay, thank you everybody as well. Dear Mother Earth, we are writing in response to recent worrying events. Things are getting out of hand. As you know from the God itself and well established in the legally binding text of Genesis 1, we were given dominion over you. The fish of the sea, the fowl in the air, the cattle, every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, herb-bearing seed, and so on. It has become apparent that you do not know what dominion means. The plants, limited to instinctive responses only, have nothing to say in the matter. Even the so-called higher order animals are, and we mean this in the kindest possible way, unsuitable for the task of maintaining order. The brutal chimps, the brainless lumps of whales. If we see another one in the telly with that fifth columnist Attenborough. As immediate actions, we demand that you stop the typhoons, the melting of the ice, the disease, the droughts, the floods. They only add to our human burden. That is why we were given dominion. You cannot be trusted to take right and proper care of us as you should. Going forward, leave it to us to determine the best course of action. Once we've made sure that the economy is stable enough to spare the extra cash, we'll come back to you with a draft plan. In the meantime, and in the spirit of partnership that we want to develop, we say to you, cease and desist. And please do not worry, we have it all in hand. We have dominion. Yours sincerely.
Thank you, Charlie. That is a really great piece. And I describe it as Swiftian in the preface, because it reminded me of the modest proposal in its whole tone and structure. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Next up, we have Martin Stepek. Again, he's introduced himself before we started. Martin teaches well-being through Zen mindfulness. He has published 6 books on the subject. As poet, he has published 5 volumes, including a meditation on his Polish heritage and a reimagining of the great Zen poet, priest, Ikkyu. And Martin says of his poem, Hamilton Palace Please, which is on page 53 of the anthology, I wrote this poem as a hymn of praise for my hometown, Hamilton, a lament for the loss of beautiful buildings and a longing for greater sanity in our species, and don't we all? Over to you.
Thanks very much, Anne and Charlie. Brilliant, love your work. So I'll have to go at 10 past, so nothing personal for those who have to go. I'm teaching mindfulness at 15:15. Hamilton Palace, please. Our Father, who art in heaven. Is this the right way to petition you? Am I even addressing the right person? The one who can make things happen? Because if not, I'm wasting my time. Forgive me for sending this to the wrong person. Oh, and forgive all my trespasses too. Also, I don't actually believe in you, but reckon nobody down here has a hope in hell of getting any of my requests done. What with the pandemic and politics and stuff. Speaking of which, it's not my main request, but if you could do your magic unobserved, so you don't freak everything out, no thunderbolts or voices from clouds, please, and wipe out COVID-19, global warming, war, racism, sexism, the other isms, inequality, poverty too, oh, and loss of biodiversity, that would be cool. But I figure you have loads of true believers requesting this of you a million times a day, and you'll look much more favourably towards their requests than one from a heathen like me. So, to my specific petition, I live in Hamilton, which, being omniscient, you already knew. It's a lovely place, but parts of it have been a bit, you don't mind if I swear, do you? Fucked up over the years. Could you knock down the Beards building at the top cross and put back the toll booth that used to be there? Built in 1642, it had a brilliant spooky tower. But if you do only one request, rather than the more traditional and obviously preferred 3 wishes option, can you make Hamilton Palace reappear? It was pulled down in 1921, undermined by, well, mines underneath its foundations. It looks absolutely awesome in photos. You'd have to move the retail park that's currently where it stood. Not sure where to put that, but I'd leave the details to you. P.S. If you do this, I'll definitely believe in you. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That was another piece I very greatly enjoyed.
Thank you.
I don't know Hamilton at all. I'll take your word for its beauty. Next up, we have Morag Anderson. Morag is an emerging Scottish poet based in Highland, Perthshire. The relationship between land, sea, and people influences her writing. This poem, Dear by the Wind Sailors, which is on page 22, was written after finding by the wind sailors, Vellela Vellela, washed ashore on her island home of Barra, and it reflects her thoughts on home, displacement, and migration, accidental or enforced. Over to you, Morag.
Hi, thank you. Dear by the Wind Sailors. You will bleach and dissolve on this beach before wind can catch your hoisted sail, carry you to warm water. Knee deep in my cold sea, I will take you for a poem. Forget you have a history of your own, counting baby teeth before you fall asleep. White peaks of incoming waves fold against October foam huddled on the shore. Red-billed oyster catchers probe cockle shells for salt-washed flesh. Black flanks of roving cattle settle at the edge of marigold kelp. They will not warn you the tide will turn some hours from now, for they do not speak of immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morag. That's such a poignant kind of poem, and it also beautifully evokes the landscape, I think, of Barra and that part of Scotland, the islands. Right, next we have Alan Robert with his T-shirt.
No shirt.
Sorry, sport shirt. Alan Robert is a prolific creator of lyrical free verse writing in English and in Doric. He has achieved success in poetry competitions across the British Isles and North America. His work has been published in literary magazines, anthologies, and webzines in the UK, Ireland, continental Europe, Africa, USA, and Canada, worldwide, in fact. He was a featured writer in the Newsmail in 2019. Coronavirus, he says, has blighted our relatively stable society. Social jaunts are but our memory. For compliant individuals incarcerated home alone, loneliness remains that tunnel without an end light. And his poem, Lonely Life on the 5th, is on page 46. And I'll just mention it's addressed to Nicola Sturgeon. And there was a point when Alan and me too wondered whether she would still be with us, as it were, politically speaking, tonight. But of course, she still is. So over to you, Alan.
Thanks very much, Anne. I'm delighted to be here. I'm also honoured to follow a Hamilton Academical fan. I'm wearing an Arbroath shirt, not a sports shirt, not a t-shirt, but a football shirt. But thank you for including my poem in the anthology. I wrote it last summer in the height, or perhaps it's the depth, of the pandemic. Lonely Life on the 5th. Dear Mistress Surgeon, wherever ye are, can I leave the 5th layer of my tenement in the Gorbals? I stayed here for weeks, no popping to the co-op, nae trips to the bookie, nae strolling Glasgow Green, nae jaunts to the boozer from a half and a half, nae walking side bluebells to tack in the sun, as if, nae stand in the rain, water running down my neck, nae gassing on the wind, Tony folk will listen. He watched Billy Mason, daily episodes on the box, yon black and white, avoiding pointless quizzing with celebs he list, but kept me lugged to the wireless, keeping richt up to date, to understand about the pandemic, though despair with politics. Get onto my computer for yon surfing online to scroll page after page with a credit card in the midst. To order messages and toiletries delivered richt to my door by a loon what carries them up 10 flights of stair, then scats. And has spoken to only one face to face, complied with social distancing, keeping twilights apart. But this is like Ballinny jail. I'm getting doolally tap. Say, Mr. Sturgeon, wherever ye are, can I leave the 5th layer? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Although that's poignant, it also did make me laugh. And I'm sure there are many people in Glasgow who are wishing that they could leave the 5th flare. Maybe they can now, at least some of them. Right. Next up, Marie-Therese Taylor. And Marie-Therese Taylor is well known to all of us in the Federation, and especially to people who have recently joined, because she's the person who sends you your welcome letter, because she is our membership secretary. M.T. Taylor's work has appeared in the Interpreter's House, Glasgow Review of Books, Ink, Sweat and Tears, The Lake, Algebra of Owls, Ophi Press, Under the Radar, and Northwards Now. She has 4 children who still talk to her, and she still interrupts. Her poem, Citizenship Test, which is on page 24 of the anthology, followed a sense of outrage that people who could teach us a thing or two about humanity were being asked to prove that they were good citizens. I felt nothing but gratitude and admiration, she says, for the refugees I have been fortunate to meet. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was a lovely, kind introduction. Citizenship test. A letter to accompany an application for asylum from the head of the family with whom the applicant is staying. Sir, I know this boy. He fled when they burned his home in the mountains southeast of Turkey. He still walks the ridge where guards made their mark on his 12-year-old thigh. He stopped his ears as the soldiers entered his 9-year-old sister. This boy has watched the sunset on Pity, and there is no beauty. What is it, you ask, that language he speaks? Your question is heavy. How many can he? Only the one, only his own, learned from his mother and the songs of strangers round half-mended walls of unwelcome tents as he crossed unmarked borders of indifferent states. You say he must learn ours if he wants to live here. Yet he already has 30 or more names for the wind. He never translates. When you talk of his flight, please think about birds, their costly migration, the strength of their hope, the weight of their wings, and the sigh of their landing.
Thank you, Marie-Therese. That's such a wonderful ending. That's really one of the most moving poems, I think, in the whole collection. And I know that you sent it to an anthology all about refugee experience, so it certainly should get in. And I have a personal word with the editor if it doesn't. Right. Next up is Stephen Barnaby. Is Stephen here?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, hello, Stephen.
Hello.
Stephen was born in Lancashire, grew up in Caithness, and lives just outside Edinburgh. He's mainly written 50-word stories over the years. That's 50 words, stories in 50 words, but occasionally exhausts himself with longer forays. His piece, Respectful Petition, which is on page 25, he says no single comment necessarily inspired this piece. More, and he's not alone in this, as we've seen from other contributors, a long-term build-up of annoyance over hearing people demean creatures who, unlike us, actually have an identifiable purpose within the ecosystem. So over to you.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you. I'm here to represent terrible lockdown haircuts, by the way. And so this is my piece. Thank you for including it. It's called Respectful Petition as presented by a council scribe. To whomsoever may have power over these things, we have, during the course of our latest assembly, using the oldest and most authoritative sources, manuscripts and oral histories, made myriad calculations, some of which are as follows. 1. Number of species we have ever rendered extinct through greed of all sorts, displays of aggressive machismo, or procurement of bogus medicines, none. 2. Number of rivers or oceans we have ever polluted with plastics, industrial slurry, or other such abominations, none. 3. Number of fossil fuels we have ever burned to near exhaustion and noxious chemicals we have ever belched skywards, none. 4. Number of football pitches of woodland we have ever obliterated in one day, none. There are many more such examples, but the above will suffice for the purposes of this petition. In the light of these calculations, we would like to request that the terms pests and vermin be either 1, defined in terms of destruction caused to our planet rather than inconvenience caused to the human race, or better still, 2, removed from the language altogether. With sincerest regards, representatives of the Council of Seagulls, Pigeons, Rats, Mice, Cockroaches, et al.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And that is a really eloquent plea on behalf of the creatures who really we ought to respect rather than revile, as you say. And if you have got your anthology with you, it's very well set out as a series of sort of clauses in a document, just like any kind of legal document might be. And it's a declaration which has in some ways more resonance than the original Declaration of Arbroath for us now, I think. Right, next up we have Janet Crawford. Is she here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Right. Hi, Janet. Janet Crawford, who is a committee member and who has been active in editing, collating submissions to the anthology, is a Falkirk-based writer. She loves writing in Scots and English and playing with words. The plea in this piece, which is called A Plea to His Teachers, and it's on page 35, was simple. A wish to bring a fuller recognition of a person or a group of people to the fore. A journey in itself, I admit, she says. Hopefully, she says, something akin to the Declaration itself, not in a comparison, but as a comment on how the spirit of the initial idea stirred her to write something of the emotion, which at the time was painful and tiring. And she says, I sought peace from it on seeing my son settled once he moved schools. It's a very moving piece, and I'll leave Janet to read it to you.
Okay. A plea to his teachers. A plea to his teachers. Can I ask you just to see my boy for who he is and know the letters that are added after his name, like some sort of title to be loudly proclaimed? Gained at age 7 when a doctor said autism and ADHD are the double whammy to blame. His exact words, to be fair, were said with a smile, instantly understood though as being the truth. Seen in the nursery class, when whole books were dictated while others drew single pictures of stars, and trains were lined up with full timetables dictated from A to Z, before the word alphabet was easy to spell. Honed Buffy 5, when he danced a different tune to the one you expect. No church song dance steps shared with pals for him, as the invites grew each year mere thin. Just tears and tantrums on the days that went wrong, as he struggled to sit still long enough to sing a group song. Eventually, heart weary, I kent it was time for him to move on to a school where he could belong. Like a switch being flicked, within weeks he was settled. Add on 7 years to now, university beckons. In a year, school will be done, and childhood trials will retell as family stories shared their cherished weekends together. Retell with a gentle reminder to fight to be a full person, not just the sum of the parts of what you to learn to excel. But to the teachers, we could see beyond some small letters. I hope a decade has taught you to understand the term could do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And that heartfelt plea, which asks people not to dismiss people they don't understand simply because they are a bit different, actually was one of the few pieces that have been published so far and circulated with a newsmail that generated a response from someone who was so moved by it and had herself been treated that way in school. And I think it's wonderful when somebody's piece of writing reaches out and touches somebody else with a real sense of truth, and Janet's did. So thank you, Janet. Next up is our very own chair, Jennifer Harley, who hardly needs any introduction from me. As you know, that she is the chair of the Federation, and she writes that she embraces a community spirit amongst writers, and she definitely does that in her role as chair. A member of West Lothian Writers, it's her sanctuary. Although her stories and poems are published in several anthologies, she writes for pleasure and says it helps to put life into perspective. Her holiday this year was to Dunkeld, where the view from her bay window over rolling hills and the rushing river inspired her poem, Don't Ignore the Signs, which is on page 51 of the anthology. Over to you, Janet.
Thank you very much, Anne. Little did I know that that weekend in Dunkeld would be our holiday for the whole of 2020. but it was a wonderful weekend. And I remember being shocked at arrows being painted onto the road and everything. Now it's just become a way of life. It was a beautiful view, and it really made me think, what are we doing to this planet? Don't ignore the signs. To my dearest friends, think on this. Flowing rivers rush into mouths of stormy seas. Burdened branches bow in reverence as they pass. Onwards, restless, relentless. Please don't stop the momentum. Rolling hills and verdant blankets swoop low, then surge, invading distant skies of greying cumulus. Constant, undaunted, undulating. Please don't stop the kinesis. Atmospheric forces drive diverse elements. Humid, arid, heating or cooling the earth. Airstream, pressure, precipitation. Please don't stop the energy. Indulgent greed abrogates Mother Nature's rules. At breakneck speed, ice melts into warmer waters. Modify, deviate, devastate. Please stop the rampage. I beg you, treasure and nurture our existence. Hold the certainty of light coming after dark. Invest, conserve, continue. Don't ignore the signs. This is my earnest plea to humankind.
Thank you very much indeed, Jennifer. And I like that poem especially because I love Dunkeld and haven't been there the whole of last year. Well, just the very beginning of the year, not since. And it is a heartfelt plea, as so many of the pieces are, on behalf of the poor old planet. We started with that with Charlie, and we're continuing the theme. Thank you, Jennifer. Right, next up we have J.L. Hall, Jackie Hall, who I think is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, hello, Jackie. J.L. Hall is a Scottish writer of essays, life writing, travel writing, short stories, and poetry. She is published across print, online, and podcasts, and has been winner and finalist in international and national writing awards. J.L. Hall lives in Edinburgh by the sea, teaching, coaching, and editing creative writing. To find out more about J.L. Hall and her work, please visit her website. I don't think I can give the whole link here, but it's www.wildsoulwalks, and you can put it up on the chat if you wanted to, Jackie. And her poem, Hear My Heart, which is on page 42, she says, I came to write my poem from a deeply personal moment, which prompted me to explore all the hopes that I have for my partner, for a relationship, and how I hope he will love me and we will love each other. In case this is of interest, and I think it is, I couldn't decide on a title for the poem, and so my partner came up, and I believe he's listening in tonight.
Yes.
Yes. My partner came up with Hear My Heart. Over to you, Jackie. J.L. Hall.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne, and thanks everyone at the Federation of Writers for tonight and for the anthology and for including my poem. Hear My Heart. My love, will you pause a moment, please, to hear what is in my heart? I ask you to think of me in all your thoughts and deeds as we travel life's thorny, tangled paths with no clear holloway home. Let your footprint be light as you walk beside me, and be sure on dry or wet earth for the trail that you leave behind to be thoughtful, not neglectful, nor to choke me with dust. Raise high the boughs by which you defend us, with your spine strong and upright. Try not to weaken in adversity, nor allow oaths and vows to fall like winter's last leaves. Hold my hand when violet skies surround us and batter our intentions. Stay until dawn mends us when we wake to hear only the sigh of our breaths. I want your tongue to speak for both of us in fair words to which others listen, to not be mute in lost moments, fading forever into the fog. I need your eyes to always view me fondly and see in the heavens above us, on cornflower days or cloudy, rainbows and swifts and song. I urge your soul to truly know me, to reach beyond the rain which lashes, to search for the drops which sparkle with miniature worlds of hope. Please cherish my wounds and scars, my constellations of dreams and joys, cup them in your palms, carry them as though they are your own. My love, I pledge to nurture you in my heart with kindness in each touch and glance. I declare this is my life's work, yours always, Hope.
That's such a tender poem, Jackie. And I'm sure your partner must have been delighted when he read it.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Right. The next one up is Rona McAdam. Rona?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Hello, Rona. Rona McAdam is studying for a degree in creative writing. She found time to do this after taking redundancy a few years ago. Many of us have found we haven't had time to write until we stop working. Me, I'm one of them. She has written several short stories, but this is her first published piece. And it's called Come Home. It's on page 40. And it was inspired by a photograph of a deserted, rainy street. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for including me in the anthology. So, come home. Please come home. I won't be angry. I'm standing here holding a photo of you, the one from the prom. You're in your long pink dress, hair up in curls, shape-shifting from a child into an adult. I want to take you in my arms and hug you, to feel your fragile bones beneath the slippery dress. Your hair tickling my nose, smelling of strawberries. My fingers catching on the jaggy thistlebacks of your earrings. Those earrings, how we argued about those. You're too young to have your ears pierced. Wait till you get to high school. Just come back home and I would let you puncture your skin in any way you wanted. Multiple rings and chains in your ears, a nose ring, ridges of studs, tattoos of eagles. I've walked down that street so often I recognise the bumps in the pavement. It's like a face of an old friend. I can avoid the potholes without looking. That's where you disappeared. Last seen near the fire station. The red engines watching over the street. Weren't they meant to protect you? Come home. That night I ran up and down shouting for you. I didn't feel the rain creeping down my neck because of the colder fear prickling my chest. I didn't feel the water crashing like waves over my legs as vans and lorries hit puddles in the road. When the firemen made me come inside, I felt a burning pain in my fingers as they warmed up. In my gut was the same burning pain, which had nothing to do with the bitter coffee they gave me. I still walk the hard ridges of that street every anniversary of your disappearance, handing out this photo to passers-by in the hope someone will remember you. Attaching this letter to the lamppost in the hope you'll read it. I need to believe that you've run away, that you'll come home someday. Just let me know you're okay. Don't worry, I won't be angry.
Thank you, Rona. And I may say I was so convinced by that when I read it that I thought, oh, poor Rona, has she really experienced this? And then I saw that when you said what had prompted you, I thought, that's brilliant, that you really thought yourself into the mind of an imaginary character in such a convincing way. Thank you. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Next up is Damaris West. I hope I've got that right, Damaris.
Yes, you have.
Good. Damaris West says that she has always wanted to live by the sea. Much of her poetry and 4 of her 5 novels are closely connected with it. She thinks, don't we all, that gulls look exceptionally romantic from a distance. But up close, they can be bullies. They aren't supposed to be eating our food. We are. The poem was inspired by witnessing a gull snatch a donut off the picnic table she was sitting at and poop all down the person next to her. She had a narrow escape. Over to you, Tamaris.
Well, I've had tears in my eyes over much of the poetry I've just heard. I hope this will be a light moment, something slightly different. A petition to gulls. Dear gulls, we love to see you soar above the sea, above the shore, but please stop eyeing up our chips. We'd like for them to reach our lips without you fluttering and swooping, screeching, pecking, snatching, pooping. Go away! Why should you steal our suppers for an easy meal? Tag behind a herring fleet, or pick some winkles. Use your feet for swimming, or to grip a cliff, instead of scaring kids as if you had a right to grab ice creams upon the wing and haunt their dreams. You may believe it less a sin to fish out litter from a bin, but when you make a sorry mess across the street, you'll never guess our cunning plans to deal with you. One way would be, long overdue, to bring our rubbish home with us, on bikes, in cars or on the bus, which means you'd have a proper diet, even if you made a fuss or tried to instigate a riot. We're not daunted by you fellas. Ever yours, all coastal dwellers.
Thank you, Tamaris. That really made me laugh when I first read it. I told you I experienced similar things from seagulls. They're not getting pooped on, luckily. Thank you very much. And I think that was probably a welcome bit of light relief, as you say, after some very moving pieces. One that still is important in its way. And after all, gulls are not doing themselves any good by eating things like donuts. We should remember. Right, next up is Rose Ann Fraser Ritchie, another member of the board of the Federation. And Rose says, are you there, Rose?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good. Good. Having really discovered, because I knew you were a bit worried you might come late, having really rediscovered poetry and spoken word in 2010 at Inky Fingers in Edinburgh, writing a poem every day after a critical illness in 2013 is her way of loving and valuing her life, being happy with the simple everyday things in life. She says it was a great honor to have her poem Wojtek, is that pronounced right, chosen by the Wojtek Memorial Trust as the official poem for the unveiling of the statue of the famous war hero there in Princes Street Gardens. She's been on the board of the Federation of Writers Scotland, organising events, still on the events team. She was a director with the Scottish Writers' Centre and now is in the Women Writers Committee of Scottish Pen. She will be published in various anthologies for Draich in 2021. Rose believes in freedom of speech and human rights and isn't afraid to speak out in support of people who want a platform for their voices to be heard. And her poem, Freedom of Love, which is on page 47 of the anthology, she says of it, my heartfelt plea was that my daughter, Mariana, be reunited with her husband, Leon, after New Zealand closed their borders to all tourists because of COVID in March 2020. They were separated for 8 months until Leon returned to Scotland again to, in inverted commas, fetch his wife back. Such was their love and determination to be together. Many couples remain apart. This was the only way Mariana and Leon could reunite at that time. But this petition, she says, has a happy ending, as they are now settled in New Zealand, and probably her next petition will be for a mother to see her daughter one day again. Over to you, Rose.
And thank you so much for including me in this amazing anthology. And the emotions I wanted to put in the chat for everyone that I've heard so far, you know, like the last poet, you know, tears in my eyes. So thank you so much. And I am a hopeless romantic, but when it comes to your daughter being separated for 8 months, and it's not only my daughter, we have to understand that so many people around the world that are in love are still separated. So, you know, this was my petition. It was called The Freedom of Love. Dear Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mrs. Hope, I am writing with much respect, one mother to another mother, here from Edinburgh, Scotland. There is a huge viral monster, not from Loch Ness, I may add. It is invading all of our planet. Now, you have managed miracles, closing your borders tight shut. Tourists will just have to wait. My daughter, though, is married to a good Kiwi from Littleton, NZ. They met, fell in love, married in New Zealand, far from me. Celebrated here again in Scotland, all before the monster COVID-19. Husband travelled ahead to New Zealand, then their dog followed just after. Next, the turn of the wife to return. She was stopped from boarding, from rejoining the love of her life. In tears, returning an unhappy wife. Love does not recognize borders. It is what our freedom is built upon. I implore you, instead of all this offshore, grant my daughter the required visa. Let her travel to where she should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rose. It was indeed a heartfelt plea, and it's good to know when so many of the pleas have no, at the moment, happy ending, that yours actually did have one.
It was, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Anne. It was very cathartic writing that at the time, and it was very helpful. And my daughter was delighted seeing this thereafter, you know, after she settled now. So it was such a relief that you know, it was a happy ending. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose. And next up is Russ McQuinney. Are you there, Russ? Russ McQuinney?
Both, yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I pronouncing your surname right?
You are, yeah.
I am.
Thank you.
Right. Right. Russ is an ASN, that's additional supports need, I believe, teacher, a recovering history teacher, which you might be able to guess from his poem, and one-time classicist who is occasionally accused of poetry. It seems to him that while the key tool in the study of science is the honesty of maths, with history, it is stories. And stories can fairly pick up fluff along the way, which is a very good attitude, I think, for a historian. His piece, Last Thoughts of Robert I of Scotland, aka Robert the Bruce, is on, I've added in the aka bit, is on page 12 of the anthology, and is inspired by that idea of history picking up fluff along the way and wondering what our gilded ancestors were really thinking in lonely moments. So over to you, Ross.
Thanks very much, Shannon. If I could just extend my own gratitude to everybody who's made this excellent anthology possible, and to the other readers tonight. The standard's been astonishing. Oh, favour. Do you have one last favour left, eh? I struggle to start now, when we spoke so often then. Remember how I pled upon my knees while the seas outside whispered your part on the rocks and hissing sands. You'd stand at the cave mouth, dressed as the day, and say, get up, get on. And I, your faithful son, would pledge you futures I did not own as holy Vergeld, a beggar prince who'd sown his seeds in the fallow ground of hallowed land long before. When Cummin joined scripture there upon your altar, they painted me, apostate, with his blood. But even then you forgave your son the excommunication of a petty pope and said, get up, get on, just loud enough in the whisper of pages, for Lamberton to make a king. When I raised the lands to you in flame, becoming a lord of blackened glens, fled by harrowed folk, again you forbearing said, get up, get on. Though quieter then, your meaning bound in smoke lifting from scorched hills. At Bannockburn, you saw De Boon and the axe head that split the silver spoon-fed mouth of a man-child come to kill a king, then said nothing, though a kingdom was made. I thought us sundered there, and your long silence since a feather's ire, but now on this leper's bed I wonder whether silence was your true voice all along, and violence mine, so that as the tallow flicker of this life palls, alone in the dark, a begging call for a sign that any of this was right at all.
Thank you, Ross. And that was, I thought, a very moving and very insightful plea, whether it's fluff or not, into what the mind might well be of someone like Robert the Bruce at the end of his life, thinking of his sins because he would have thought of them in that way. And although he is a hero, he was certainly, you can't deny it, a man of violence as well. And certainly so were many of the other people he was surrounded by, and it was part of their life. But I really liked the way that you got inside the mind of someone whom, of course, you've never met, but it was persuasive, very convincing to me. So thank you. Next, we have Eve. Eve, are you there?
I'm here.
Ah, hello, Eve. Now, I've got to now say a double apology. Now, the first apology is that you will not, I'm afraid, be able to find Eve's piece, Paul's Petition, in the anthology, because in the first print of it, it was, by my carelessness, missed out. But it has been reprinted. I didn't want to stop sending it out to all the people who'd already sent in stuff, and it was, you know, it was all there. We had the copies. So I didn't want to hold that up, but it has been reprinted with Eve's poem. Well, it's not a poem exactly. Is it? I'm not trying to. It has been reprinted with Eve's piece in it, and anybody who buys the book now from the public sales, it will have Eve in it, and of course she is here tonight to read it to us. And the other thing I have to apologise for, Eve, although it's not really my fault, is that the biography has still not appeared in spite of everything. So perhaps you'd like to say a little bit about yourself. And of course, it wasn't a poem, it was a piece of prose, but it was a very heartfelt one. And I thought it highlighted a significant problem in our society.
Okay, well, thanks for including me. We do seem to have a communication problem between us. But this is what I did attempt to send you for my bio. I originate from Yorkshire, but I've lived in Scotland for 25 years now. And since settling in Nairn 12 years ago, I've been writing quite seriously. I did write a first novel, but that's gathering cobwebs. I'm toiling with the second, not helped by COVID at the moment. I'm a proud member of the Pen and I writing group in Nairn, and really missing being around the table with them. Inspired to write this piece by my love of animals and concern for their welfare. So this is Paul's petition. Please put your paws to my petition. It will save lives and heartbreak. My first memory is of a dark, cold, foul-smelling place. Yes, I know puppies are born blind, but even when I felt my eyes open, the world was still dark.
Oh, lassies.
I squirmed and jostled with my siblings. My only comfort was when I reached the softness of an animal larger than me. I now think this must have been my mother. I smelled something sweet and fought my way towards it. I pushed my lips around the softness and sucked as hard as I could, but there was little reward. I was so hungry. Then what I now know to be rough hands grabbed my neck. I was flying. There were loud noises. I blinked, and for a short time I saw light before I was tossed. I found myself squashed against other bodies. I smelled that some of them were my siblings, but others carried new scents. In darkness again, I was moving. Not my body, for I could not shuffle without banging against another, but something outside was moving us. This went on for a long time, and I was sick. Others were sick or pooed. I now know that word. Eventually, there was light. I was with others who looked like me, but I smelled they came from different places. He's a pedigree cockapoo. That's his mother. No, we don't have papers, but he's cheap at £500. She was not my mother. She had snapped at me. But that was when my life changed. I felt warm and safe in the arms of the human I now know to be Carol. I love her so much. When I am ill, which unfortunately I often am, she never leaves me. I heard her speaking to the man in green. Yes, please treat him, whatever the cost. I know I should never have bought a dog which was clearly from a puppy farm. I saw the advert on Gumtree. Put your paws to my petition to end puppy farming. Signed, Benji.
Thank you. Thank you, Eve. And somebody else who's got inside the mind of somebody quite different from herself, a dog, but in a way that really brings to attention the plight of people, of dogs rather, I mean, who are puppy farms, and people who buy them without really knowing that they come with a whole lot of problems, because of course the sole aim of the puppy farm is to make money, and they're not at all concerned about the welfare of the dog. And I thought that was the really good piece for doing that. Next up is Anne McKinnon. Anne, are you there?
Yes.
Ah, hello, Anne. Anne writes poetry in both English and Scots, and she'd be very well known to many of our members. She's had success in the Macash poetry competitions. She's been published in various anthologies, magazines, and pamphlets. She was awarded a New Writers Award, and as a result, had her collection May Fleurs published by Tapsell Thierry. She has a lifelong interest in promoting the Scots language and feels that not enough is done to promote it. Hence, her letter to John Swinney, reminding him about the Scots language policy, and that is called Dear Mr. Swinney, and it's on page 19.
Thank you. And thank you very much for including me in the anthology. Everything has been beautiful tonight, all the readings. I'll just read mine. Dear Mr. Swinney, re the Scots Lead Policy 2015. Gaelic is deeing out, and if we dinna do summit, Scots will gan the same way. So I'm geeing you on to use it. The Scots Lead Policy promised a mere high profile, but in the midst of often else, it seems to have tumbled down. Siller was put into it, but it needs a bit more prodding to heat it up and push it for it. Mere use of Scots is a must. For our lang, we've allowed our tongue to be hodden down, skelp it about, until a messin, neither one thing nor another. As long as hunters o' us speak it, then surely it's feasible to see it as a worthy and real way to keep our lead living. It's the wains we maun lippen on. The hodback is the English is spoken all over, and folk are less mindful of blethering in their natural tongue. Micht I put for it that more education is fell needed, and it could be done as long as enough of us want it. So come on, gie us your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. That was a very eloquent plea to Mr. Swiddy. It would be a good idea, I feel, to send it to him.
Yeah, I think I might now that it's in the anthology.
Next up is M. Chambers. I think you're there.
I am.
You are, yes. M. Chambers, I think you'd rather be called that than Montague, is that right?
That's true.
Yeah. Started writing when he was at school, but even at an earlier age, 8 to 9, he used to make up stories on family holidays about the area they were staying in and the landscape. He started working life as a professional archaeologist. He's now retired and lives on the edge of the North York moors. He writes for pleasure and was the runner-up in a short story competition at his workplace. This encouraged him to do more. And I think that is true for many people, that a small success to start with gets you on to higher things later on. This encouraged him to do more with his writing, and he started sending it off to competitions. His short stories have been recognized in a number of competitions. He recently won first prize from the Scottish Federation of Writers, as you may remember, some of you, with his story Going Home. And about his piece, and I have to confess that in the anthology, I called it To My 7-Year-Old Self, which was seemingly the title, but his true title is Mandala, which I had mistaken for pseudonym, but Mandala is the true title. And Martin says, I was thinking, who would I write a letter to? I thought of other writers who wrote a piece addressed to their younger selves. So I thought I would, and picked 7, the age of 7, as a lot happened after that, so it seemed a good age to choose. Mandala, because as I wrote, I could see cycles of thoughts, and it was like a Mobius strip, never ending, or a fractal. No matter how deep you went, the pattern repeated. Over to you, Martin.
Thanks, Anne. Well, first, thanks for including me in the anthology. I feel quite humble with so many professional writers having gone before me, as it were, and also an apology. I'm afraid my neighbour, who is a builder, is drilling the wall. So if there's a sound of drilling suddenly, that's where it's coming from. Right, so Mandala. To my 7-year-old self. All those things they tell you at school, they are not true. They don't say them because they are true, but because they wish them to be. They are dreamers who go out wearing sunglasses, complaining that everything seems rather dark. You swing between anger and sadness. The rage you constantly suppress is a fire consuming your potential. Your sadness is the quenching water that prevents the fire from destroying itself. A word about love. It isn't what you think it is. For you, it will be something quite different anyway. When that night comes, my dear self, I will not tell you not to weep for him. You were in the appointed place at the appointed time. It was only death that prevented him from coming as he promised. You will invent 1,000 myths to explain your past and constrain your future. He would have been the first to tell you to sing. For songs you have in you, you may not sing as they require. You may not sing as others wish. A bird in the rocky wilderness of self, you may be rarely heard, but it will be in your own authentic voice. You have so many lessons to learn, most of them known at the beginning. All your life was a quest for the way back. When you are ripe with years, untrammeled by the conventions or the uncertainties of youth, you can be truly young again. You will tread a circle in your pilgrimage, only to find yourself where I am now. After all the years, you will come to where I am, my dear, dear myself, and to write this letter. Please remember to put in it all the things I have forgotten and remind me of what is to come. For you will realize as you grow that time is not as they tell us, and such is the labyrinth. Looking back with no regrets, I remain you, starting on my journey.
Thank you, Martin. And I thought that was a great ending, actually. I remain you, which of course is true, but that you're starting on your journey and not ending it, because as you say, life is circular. And that is a very deep and a very moving piece. So thank you for it. Now we'll have something, again, completely contrasting, and it's been a night of contrasts. Next up is Stephen Watt. Stephen?
Hi, Anne, how you doing?
Hi, Stephen. Stephen, people will know, is a former Makar of the Federation, and just about to find his biog. Yes, here we go. Stephen Watt is the author of 4 poetry collections. Since 2016, he has been, as people have alluded to at the beginning, poet in residence at Dumbarton Football Club, and he has previously held titles of Poet-in-Chief for the Hampden Collection and Makar for the Federation of Writers Scotland. Stephen has edited 2 punk poetry collections in memory of the Clash frontman, Joe Strummer, and Buzzcock songwriter Pete Shelley. He has also won the Poetry Rivals Slam, Stanza International Digital Poetry Contest, and the Tartan Treasures Award. And Stephen says, my poem, which is called DTs, was in response to the tired cliche of rock and roll privilege and a plea to Kasabian's lead vocalist, Tom Mahan, is it Tom Mahan?
Yeah, yeah.
To curb drinking, which had led to violent outbursts and domestic violence. So over to you, Stephen.
Thanks very much for that, and hello everyone. It's been a lovely evening listening to you all. I actually realised 2 minutes ago that I've been sitting here for an hour and a half with my earphones not plugged in. I've been so engrossed with the poetry I didn't even realise. Anyway, this poem, as Anne just alluded to, is called DTs. Dear Tom Mahan, frontman of Kasabian, you could fill a stadium with an indisputable swagger, or the volume of lager you managed to put away during any night. You're a motherfucking role model to these kids, to the lads lapping up your lyrics, to the lasses licking their glossy lips. But you don't know what to do with your fists. It's like air is an enemy sliced with microphone high kicks. Storms of temper begin like this until backstage loved ones take the brunt, thumped into the abyss, where your adoring fans are hidden from your intoxicated anger, and only the blackened eye of a CCTV camera exposes what is missed behind the glamour. Dear Tom, you may need to face delirium tremens. You will need to face your devil and demons. You cannot continue to numb these feelings. You must abandon alcohol in order to be forgiven. Make it your priority to be a quitter. And remember, history is only ever written by the victors.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And that is a really eloquent plea, I think, to Tom Mahan. Probably would fall on deaf ears, but it's an excellent poem, so thank you. Next up is Geoffrey Kemp. Are you here, Geoffrey?
Yes, I am, yep.
Hello, Geoffrey. Geoffrey says, I live in East Lothian, struggle to learn, I can't pronounce the Gaelic, you have to pronounce that for me, but he's struggling to learn Gaelic, and struggle for equanimity when my grandson berates my pronunciation, say, and I can't even pronounce Gaelic in Gaelic. As is hopefully evident, he says, his poem, Post-Progressive Music, which is on page 16, and apologies to Martin and Stephen that I didn't give the pages on which your pieces appear, was not written with the most serious intentions. Music has a gift of harmonizing disparities, and we have the ability to create social awkwardness, which isn't really how I wrote it, as sometimes happens. It was just whimsically there, and it is indeed a whimsical poem about connections or misconnections. Over to you, Jeff.
Oikavar, Hayas Tapalif, Huludunya. This is called chord progression. Dear B7, I saw your profile on Chimer and decided this is difficult for me. I like to not quite sing both ways, but when I experience one thing, have the urge to surge in the opposite direction. If I hear minor, I expect something major to appear. Back to your advert on Chimer. I'd like to meet up. Make, as is said so often, we pretend that it is sensible, beautiful music together. I feel too shy to send this message. I fear it'll be put aside. Yours, therefore, in abject silence and some ambiguity. A flat, minor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. That was a really witty piece and a musical accompaniment to illustrate it. Really enjoyed that. Thank you. Next up, we have Gail. And I know you're here, Gail. Gail, you show yourself.
I've just unmuted.
Thank you.
So if I could have just a wee second, just to stabilise the phone and read this piece.
No, can I just introduce you first, Gail? Gail Smith.
Just getting the book back.
Gail Smith is a trans woman and spoken word poet from Baillieston, another Baillieston connection, Charlie Gracie. She co-hosts the long-running Words and Music Night with her friend Jen Hughes, who would have been here tonight, but sadly is unwell. She has performed her work throughout Scotland since 1993 and is particularly proud of her connection with the Other Voices Spoken Word Collective. The topic she has chosen for her poem is the Declaration of Arbroath, and Arbroath's place in our national story is called Let Not the Prize Slip, and it's on page 9. Over to you, Gail.
Thanks, Anne. Let not the prize slip. In the days of my life, the town of the Smokies, which bear its name, has become known for fishing, football and caravan sites, rather than the rights which asserted the will of the nation, declaring that in Scotland the people are sovereign. Not monarch, nor the crown the noble's prize. This vision can never be cut to the size the enemy deems fit for it to be. This is what freedom really means. We must have the courage to follow the dream which inspired the forebears to fight, to do what is right and guard our liberty with all we have, for all we aspire to be. We must do this not for previous generations, but for those yet to come, the Scots who will be here long after we've gone. The march of time moves on, and we must have our say in how our country is shaped. 700 years have passed since the spring day we claimed the rights to our story, not for riches nor glory will this town or the land on which it stands ever be silenced. There are those who would leave the past today to be visited only in snapshots, edited by strangers who don't know our history, nor learn the truth of those who were bought with promises of gold. Arbroath stands proud of its place, as our never-ending story winds its way through the roads which meander to beaches and the abbey. The sleepy coastal town moves on as it has through the years to embrace the next stage in the unfolding drama of a nation, declaring to the world it will be more than a snapshot or a wee smoky town. Let not the prize slip from our grasp.
Thank you, Gail. And that was an eloquent plea for Scottish independence. Let not the prize slip from our grasp. And I like the way that you end with it not Arbroath being more than a snapshot in a wee smoky town, but standing for freedom. And I may say that yours is the only piece in the entire anthology which unequivocally celebrates the original Declaration of Arbroath. There is another piece.
That was a suggestion by someone who has a politically opposing stand to mine, but is a very good friend and is also in this book, Peter Russell.
Yes, he's done a wonderful take on it. Warlords are us, but it's a quite different. It's quite a different take on it from yours. And thank you, Gail. Right now,
I thought it was really funny.
Yes, it was very good. Thank you. Now we've come to the end of all the people who are actually live attending, but we have two poets whom we are going to read on behalf of. And the first one is Kieran Baird, Kieran P. Baird, I should say, and it's his poem Declaration of Red Squirrels on page 27, which Marie-Therese is going to read in a moment. Kieran P. Baird is a published writer on a personal journey of self-discovery and improved mental well-being. His work has appeared in both print and online. Recent examples include speculative books, the Centenary Collection, Stanza, Celtic Nations magazine, and Flora Fiction. Kieran has a first-class honours degree in animal biology. Studying our native red squirrels' plight at university and spending many hours watching them at various locations across Scotland, they will always have a special place in his heart. It is hoped that with continued conservation efforts, future generations will be able to see with their own eyes these beautiful, charming creatures. Do hope so, because they are under threat, as we all know. The poem is on page 27. Over to you, Marie-Therese, for Kieran P. Baird.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Kieran, if you watch this on the recording, for writing this piece. Red squirrels used to meet me on my commute to work when I worked up in Aberdeenshire, and I applaud every couplet. Declaration of Red Squirrels. To the big two-legged creatures known to yourselves as people. Perhaps you stopped admiring our innate beauty, or were we remiss in our soul's sacred duty to bring a small spark to the forests and woodlands throughout all of Scotland, both highlands and lowlands, to proudly scurry and climb up high, free in the treetops by daylight for all to see? Yet you wanted new colours in your stately homes to complement managed nature and garden gnomes. For whatever reason we no longer appealed, you introduced a new species. Our fate was sealed. There came only a few, though they colonised fast until their numbers were great and ours were surpassed. They brought with them disease from which we weren't immune, and it looked very bleak. Our twilight was soon, However, some folk saw fit to give us a chance to preserve our habitats and slow the advance. We need more people to reflect. Look deep inside. Please remember what came first. Have some renewed pride. Together, we can restore what was nearly lost. It will take commitment, true. Hard work is the cost. Provide us havens. The animals will arrive. Ecosystems for all will ensure we survive. I hope this humble letter has outlined our plight, and know that with your help we can take back our right to be little flames amongst the foliage once more. A common sight again at everyone's front door. To be safe, to thrive, having freedom to roam, forever secure in our ancestral home.
Thank you, Marie-Therese. Beautifully read. And now the second one that I'm reading is going to be read on behalf, I'm reading it, of the person not able to be here, David Betteridge. David says, like many people learning about the world through the smog-ridden late 40s and 50s, I arrived at a green perspective quite naturally. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring continued my education. My poem Earth, long matured, summarizes some of what the whole world knows. It joins other writings of mine of a political kind that have been published in book or pamphlet form over the last 20 years, principally by Smokestack Books, Manifesto Press and Rhizome Press. Also on culture matters and facts and fiction. And this is yet another ecological poem, and it is Earth Petitions Humankind, which is a kind of nice counterweight to Charlie, which was humankind petitioning Earth. And it's on page 49 of the anthology. Earth Petitions Humankind by David Betteridge. Count how many open wounds I bear from which I bleed, and there are worse inside, which you inflicted there. Stop laying loads on me and burning me. Stop fouling my aquifers and starving me of air. Let me lie fallow when I will, and other times run free or wild, replenishing my life without detriment, without care. Have you eaten some strange drug that has made you lose your mind? Have you dreamed into being some strange god that now you serve, that makes you grow apart against our shared grain, unkind? Me being sick, you are sick too. And if I die, where and how can you remain alive? Covenant with me anew, even as we teeter on extinction's edge. Do this, or else not one of us survives. And it's dated Earth Day, 22nd of April, 2020. And now, finally, our very last, but by no means least reader, and I hope that she has managed to get here, Finola Scott.
Yes, I'm
Finola?
here. Yes.
Hi.
I've been listening for ages.
Yes, I'm sorry that we're running late, and that's, I'm sure, my fault.
No, I'll just breeze through this quickly. You don't need to introduce me. I'll just read the poem, will I, if we're running tight?
Well, no, surely I should. I will introduce you. You haven't provided a very lengthy introduction, and Finola Scott opens the collection with Broad Lassies on page 5. Finola's poems are on posters, tapestries, postcards, published widely, including in New Writing Scotland, The High Window and Lighthouse. Red Squirrel Press published her pamphlet, Much Left Unsaid. Finola Scott, more at Facebook, Finola Scott Poems. She was lucky enough to spend time on Lismore the island of Lismore, working with M. Strang, wonderful thing to do, focusing on environmental issues. This poem, it's not, is it a poem? Prose poem, perhaps, came out of that very special experience.
Thank you, Anne. And can I just say thank you to everybody. This has been a terrific event, and it's the kind of thing that shows the importance of the Federation, that gives members an opportunity to speak up and not only be in print, but be recorded for posterity. It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to share a stage with members and with all the makers that are here tonight. There's a right wheen of makers. It was lovely to see Leila and Jim, our new makers, joining Stephen, yourself, Anne, and many others here tonight. So thank you. It's a privilege. My piece is Bra Lassies. Now is a sair time. We sense the darkening, the dimming o' it all, the shimmer, shiver o' the world. But we hae love and strength in our hearts, hands and minds. Gather courage frae those wha stride our memories, wha blaze like comets. Jeannie Allen, Rosa Luxemburg, Rosa Parks, Greta Thunberg. Such women with fierce longing. And all they ghosts of others who held staunch against the world's brutality. Remember them. Let's weave a plaid of their metal and bind it tight. Hold together, for we've mighty work to tackle. We see the sparrows dwindling, the salmon trapped in cages smeared with blooms of algae. We feel patterns breaking, air choking, saltings shifting. Times we fear it's our muckle. Women ha' aye made a difference. We gain stood Faslane, witness at Dargavel. We ken joy. The oceans sing to us. Summer dances and the braw land is ours. But new fears, we mun stand up, gather mind and body to speak out. When the high hegions grab and lie, we mun hold folk to account. As ice melts and waters rise, it's time to mak demand. So kettle up, bonny quines. Our moods are full of music. Our hearts burst with pleasure. Our feet burl and reel. We screeve, paint and perform. Mither Moon hodds us in her thrall. Let us harness her siller, for we've work to do.
Thank you, Finola. And that's a brilliant piece, calling us all to action, and especially us women to action, for we do have work to do. And thank you to everybody who came here tonight and gave of themselves. They did their work for the Federation, reading the pieces so well, really well, and I've really enjoyed it thoroughly. My apologies for running late. I can only blame myself for that. And I was urging everybody else to stick to time. And I hope to see some of you again at the May launch. There are still a few places left on that for people who want to have a second go. But obviously, if somebody who hasn't read at all suddenly wants to read there, they get priority. But any spare places, if anybody does want to have a second go and hasn't already booked one, then by all means contact me. So thank you all again. Thank you very much to Dave and Jennifer, Dave, her son, and Jennifer, because they've been the ones who've actually organised the whole technical side. I'm the mere compere. Apologies for anything that I've got wrong, lines I fluffed, etc. And hope to see you all again, maybe one day, even see you all in the flesh. So thank you and goodbye.
Good night.
Can I just say thank you to Anne? What a wonderful compere you have been. Thank you so much.
Indeed.
Well done.
It has. Brilliant. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.